We've all heard at some point about the greatest planes of our time, from the majestic double-decker quad jets, namely the 747 and the A380, to the beloved mid-sized modern wide-bodies such as the Dreamliner and the A350, all of which were huge commercial successes, receiving hundreds if not thousands of orders from airlines. But did you know that there is an aircraft made by Airbus that got a single order this entire year? Yup, that's right. The A330-800neo holds the prestigious honor of being Airbus's worst-selling plane, having sold a measly 12 aircraft since its launch back in 2014. However, this isn't a fair comparison, as the A330-800 is pretty young, whereas some of these other iconic aircraft have been around for decades. But even its older brother, the A330-900, not exactly a popular plane either, managed to receive well over 300 orders during the same time period. So the answer has to do with an inherent flaw in the aircraft itself. So where did Airbus go wrong? In order to understand that, let's go back to the very beginning. Back in the 80s, the aviation industry looked a lot different than it does today. There were really big planes like the 747 that flew high-demand long-haul routes, and then there were small planes like the 737 for short-haul routes. But there was nothing for middle to long-haul routes where demand was too high for the relatively small A300, but not enough for the massive 747. So Airbus bet big on a new type of plane, a twin-jet widebody that could seat more people and fly farther than ever before. At a time when long-haul travel was dominated by huge quad-jets and tri-jets, this was revolutionary, and it worked. Twin-jet widebodies started becoming really popular beginning in the 90s thanks to regulations on how far two-engine planes could fly being relaxed. Following the success of the A330-300, Airbus decided to take it even further with the launch of the 200, which could fly up to 1,000 miles further. However, they achieved this by shrinking the plane, enabling it to fly longer distances on the same fuel but at the expense of passenger capacity. Fast forward to today, the original A330s have become Airbus's best-selling widebodies, so naturally Airbus designed modern re-engined versions of these successful aircraft, with the 800 to replace the 200 and 900 to replace the 300, but the A330neo program, particularly the 800, is proving to be much more unpopular than its predecessor. But why? Maybe it's because the original A330s, known as the CEOs, meaning current engine option, aren't old enough to be replaced yet. After all, the average A330ceo is only 12 years old, and the last A330-200 was delivered quite recently in 2020. While that may be true to some extent, it doesn't fully add up, because a lot of airlines have in fact switched out their older A330s, not for the Neos, but for Dreamliners. This is pretty interesting because the A330neos have the same 30-year-old airframe as the old A330s, meaning that pilots and cabin crews require little to no additional training to operate them. And when comparing the A330-800 with its much more popular rival, the 787-8, the A330 wins in both how many passengers it can carry and how far it can fly, accommodating up to 260 passengers and flying up to 9,300 miles. So why on earth are airlines choosing the Dreamliner over the A330neo? Well, for starters, the additional seats that the A330 offers are negligible, as the extra cabin space amounts to the rough equivalent of 3 economy class seats, which is not exactly gonna make or break. And its longer range is actually more of a weakness than a selling point. While the A330-800 is definitely capable of flying ultra-long-haul routes across large distances, the fuel costs for that are bound to be pretty high, and no airline wants to spend that much money on fuel if they're not flying enough passengers to make a profit. For the kind of middle-haul routes that these aircraft are used for, the extra range is unnecessary, and the bigger fuel tanks needed to achieve that range have resulted in higher per capita fuel costs, making the lighter weight and more fuel-efficient 787 a cost-effective alternative. On top of that, the Dreamliner also offers an enhanced passenger experience through higher cabin pressure and humidity levels on board, which has been shown to decrease jet lag and passenger discomfort caused by dry cabins. So no wonder airlines are ditching the A330s for Dreamliners. The lower costs per seat, thanks to lighter weight fuselage and lower fuel burn rates, have made the Dreamliner the aircraft of choice for many middle-haul routes. And the A330-800's unpopularity seems to be a self-perpetuating cycle. For instance, Hawaiian Airlines, which has been in the news recently, operates a large fleet of A330ceos that are perfect for the medium-haul market of connecting the Hawaiian Islands to mainland USA. Hawaiian had initially ordered 6 A330-800s to replace their current A330 fleet, but later ended up canceling it in favor of the Dreamliners because, as their CEO put it, buying planes that nobody else wants is probably not the greatest idea. However, the handful of airlines that did buy the A330-800 have all found it to be a great aircraft. But with its superior range as its only selling point, the A330-800 is designed for an ultra-niche market and is unlikely to ever become a common sight at airports. After all, only 6 of them have been delivered to airlines, of which only 4 are actively in use. Still, it's important to keep in mind that there are quite a few airlines with relatively young fleets of A330ceos that are yet to order replacements, and if the last few years have taught us anything, it's just how volatile the aviation industry can get. As of today, the odds are stacked against it, but perhaps someday the A330-800 could make a comeback. Comment down below what you think the future has in store for the A330-800, and as always, if you found this video interesting, subscribe for more.